And I'm Jane.
And we're SpielMill.
And this is our video about Alhambra
The Mega Box.
Part 1. Because this is going to take multiple parts. If you're not familiar with Alhambra or the Mega Box, so Alhambra is a pretty much gateway board game.
Mm-hmm.
And the Mega Box has Alhambra in it, but it has 43 expansions as well. The expansions are all pretty concise. None of them have more than a page of rules, I think, in the rule book. But the rule book is 48 pages long because of all those expansions.
Yes. And it is, so we're playing through them all. We're going to play all of them, and we're going to, this video is to talk about what we thought of the expansions, what we think they bring to the game, etc., etc. So you can, if you have the Mega Box or want to get it, you can decide which ones you want to play with, or not play with.
Yeah, we at this point, we have played through 23 of the 43 expansions, but we're going to talk about 21 of them today because we've only played the last 2 once. So all the expansions we're going to talk about today, we've played at least twice.
Yep.
And that's what we're doing. We started working them. We started doing it one at a time, like play a game, add an expansion, play a game, add an expansion. Mostly adding and not taking away.
It got to be a lot.
So we're playing like 15 expansions at a time right now. But most of them are really minor, and they just tweak a little thing in the game, so they're easy to sort of incorporate in tandem with the other expansions. There are some exceptions to that rule, and we'll talk about those as we get to them. The biggest thing is some are just overpowered. They overpower the scoring system, I feel.
Yeah.
The scoring system in Alhambra is like you have different color buildings, and each different color building gives you points based on whether or not you came in first and having that, how many buildings of that color that you had, second or third. And then, but there's other ways you score. We'll talk about the Falconers expansion. We'll talk about the camps expansion, which has the bastions. We'll talk about the Street Trader expansion, which adds meeples. There's a treasure chest expansion that adds treasure chests. There's all kinds of bunch of expansions that change scoring.
Yes. Also, we'll talk about how easy they are to add to set up. That is a cascading scale.
Yeah. At this point, setting up the deck with the 15 expansions in it, or 15 plus, it takes like 20 minutes. Because it's like, you know how if you played Pandemic and you had to set up the Pandemic deck, it's like that on steroids.
Yeah, exactly. So, I know what I was going to say. So also we play player. And so the mechanism for that is a dummy player.
Yes.
Dirk. We call him Dirk the Jerk. And that works a little bit different than it would with 3 players. So we'll talk a little bit too about how that interacts with some of the expansions. So with that, why don't we get started with the first expansion?
All right.
So
our first expansion. Oh, go ahead.
The first expansion is a really small one. It's the Vizier expansion.
Yep.
It's just a little tile that has like a day side and a night side, and it lets you immediately, when it's not your turn, flip it over to the night side and take. You have to pay exact change. Take a building from the market. So. You know, you can sort of scoot in front of the line if there's something out that you really want.
Yeah, it only works if you pay exact change. Did you say that? And then, yeah, it's just, I use it once a game. I always use it every game, but only once. Yeah,
I tend to flip it over a little bit more. I don't flip it over every turn, but, or every game, but I do, because it takes a turn or an action. So if I pay exact change, sometimes then there's maybe not cards out I want, or there's nothing else I want to do with my extra action, I will flip that back over because it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful, but I never want to spend the action to flip it back over. So
I think that this expansion is, first of all, would be really helpful if you had a lot of players, if you're playing with more than 2, because, you know, if the tile comes out that you desperately need, the walls are just the right shape, the right color, whatever, chances of it getting back around to you, of course, are slimmer and slimmer the more players there are. So I think with multiple players, it'd be helpful. That said, with 2, it also, you know, sometimes there's
It's helpful.
something I really want. And I think it helps mitigate some of the luck factor in Alhambra, where, you know, there's only so many buildings with a certain wall configuration, and you could just really, really need something. Sometimes you back yourself into a corner, and you need a really special type of wall or something to be able to keep building. This kind of helps get around that. So it does something that I really like in expansions, is it addresses what can be sort of a frustrating weakness in a game.
Absolutely. No, I think it's good. It adds. You know what's really nice about it is it's really easy to incorporate, and it helps. So it doesn't put any of all the expansions. It's one of the ones with the least impact on setup and incorporation.
Yep, absolutely.
So
all
right. Our second expansion that we're going to cover today is the currency exchange cards. Now, we've been playing with these. We incorporated these in our like second or third game of Alhambra, and we're like 20 games in, and we're still using them.
Mm-hmm.
We really like them. There is a couple of negatives, but like for the most part, they're good. And basically what they are is they're cards that will say like blue and yellow. And then you can use, in Alhambra, normally you have to use blue money to buy a blue building or a building on the blue marketplace space. And then, but with these cards, I can use yellow money, use the card, and buy a building in the blue market space. So it allows you to sort of flex your money a little bit. You do have to use a turn to take the card off the marketplace. So if at the end of your turn, whether or not you take it might depend on what other money cards are available. And then the other issue is that sometimes they're not in high demand, and they come out and you have like 3 or 4 of them in the marketplace, and nobody wants to take them, and it just clogs up the market.
Yeah, so we've actually house ruled that. We have a ticket to ride rule where if it's all exchange cards, we can, and we agree, we can just sweep them aside. This also mitigates something that can happen in Alhambra, where the color money that you desperately need just doesn't come out, and doesn't come out, and doesn't come out, and doesn't come out. You're waiting forever. The shuffle just, you know, all the orange are at the end of the deck or something. So it can really be helpful in that sense.
Absolutely. And you have, and you know, you might have plenty of yellow and green, and you have a yellow-green exchange card, but your yellow allows you to buy the green card with exact change. Which gives you another action. So that's gives you that sort of flex too.
Yeah, for sure.
So it is nice. It's very nice. I know I rated it highly, but it does have a couple cons in terms of how it clogs up the market space and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
all right. Our next one is bonus cards. And these are cards that have one of the buildings that have no walls on it. And if you buy that and get it into your Alhambra, you can play the card, and that gives you an extra building of that color. So if you have the brown one with no walls, you have that card. When you buy the brown one that matches that value with no walls, you can play them down. Now that counts as an extra building. So
I found this advantageous in a 2-player game because it helps you overcome Dirk a little easier. Dirk he's collecting a bunch of cards. Maybe he has a bunch of tiles. He's got like 3 whites, and you have 2 white buildings. But if you have the bonus card, you suddenly have 3, and you're caught up to Dirk. So that's very helpful. The negative is they're very random, and the odds of you getting your bonus card are pretty much 50-50.
at best.
I mean, that's if you're focused on getting it.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
It's because it's hard.
I mean, sometimes when we're doing with Dirk, so Dirk gets 6 tiles right at the top of the pile in the first round, he could end up with your bonus card, bonus tile. We actually mitigated that. We
kind of redeal it back into the deck, but that's a pain in the butt, and you know, it's more work on managing the game. And I just think we eventually pulled these out. We played like 10 games with them, but we eventually pulled them out. We liked them to a degree. I thought they were, I kind of rated them. They're one of my lower ratings for expansions, though, because of the arbitrariness. Like, my bonus tile might come out at the end of my turn after I bought some other tile. And maybe I don't have any money in that denomination. Maybe Jen does. Jen gets first shot at it, and I never even see that again.
Right.
You know, now the Vizier could help there. If I have exact change, I can flip this as a Vizier. But it's still like...
But you still have to have exact change in that denomination.
It's so random.
Yeah.
Whether or not you have the right timing to get the bonus card that you need. And it's just too random.
Yeah. I agree. And this is one of those ones that the Vizier... This is one of the really interesting things about these expansions is that taken individually, they have one impact on the game, but when you start to put them together,
right,
you have a totally different impact. And so having the Vizier when you have the bonus cards is critical, because sometimes that, you know, your bonus card comes out at the end of your turn, or bonus tile, and I see the glint in Jane's eye. I know she's going for it. If I still have my Vizier, I can grab it.
And those no wall tiles tend to be highly valuable because you usually need them to fill holes in your Alhambra. Not that you can have a whole hole, but you know what I mean? Like you need a little spot where you need a tile without any walls. And that happens quite often. And I find them valuable because you build off them really well.
Right.
So
now the next expansion actually, I think, does a better job of doing sort of what the bonus cards do.
Yeah, especially in mitigating dirt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So go ahead.
Well,
yeah, I didn't know you were introducing it, but the squares expansion is called. And what this does is introduces like squares, plazas, quads, whatever you want to call them. They're little squares, but they're tiles that you put in your Alhambra, and there's 6, one for each color building.
Mm-hmm.
But if I take a red square and play it next to a red building, that red building now counts twice. So I get 2 red buildings for that red building. So if I do it right and I have a red square next to 2 red buildings, that's like 4 red buildings. Mm-hmm. So that's extremely valuable. Mm-hmm. And that really helps overcome dirt.
It does. Now they all have walls. So
mm-hmm.
I think they'll have at least one wall. So the most you could get around a tile at this point would be 3.
But that's 6.
But that's 6, right?
Yeah.
And that's really, really helpful. Like you said, getting around Dirk. The thing I hate about Dirk is he doesn't make sense. Like he could have a majority red tiles, and then at the next scoring, when he gets 6 tiles, they could all be purple, completely blowing out of the water your strategy. Like he had no reason to go for purple tiles.
He was behind in purple. Why is he going all purple?
And you've got no chance to catch up because he gets them all at once. And so these squares do a really good job of mitigating against Dirk. He stopped being a real problem once these squares came out.
Yeah. The squares is one of my favorite of the expansions in the game.
Yeah.
I really like it. As we've had more expansions involved, I've been using it a little less. It's a little less necessary, but it's still really valuable. And I think it integrates well with how Alhambra plays.
Mm-hmm. I
and
agree.
Therefore, I love it.
Right.
They don't count as buildings. So on themselves, they don't count as buildings. But if they're adjacent to the same color building, they help that building count double. And that's fantastic.
And their walls can help you extend your wall. It can help you by, giving you another opening somewhere. If you need a building hanging off of the side of something so that you have an opening on the bottom, the right tile, the right square can help that. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility, which is so key, because that is one of the dangers of Alhambra. Sometimes you end up backed into a corner where you've got like one tiny spot you can put a building, and you're just waiting forever for that building to come out.
Yeah, I found I've done this a couple times where I've had a big wall, but there's a gap in the middle, right? Mm-hmm. So I want the most points for my wall, so I want to connect that gap. Well, I just take a square that has the right walls and I put it there. I don't even care if it matches with the same color buildings. I just extended my wall by like 10 spots, and I'm getting a lot of points for that. So you can create this mega wall because you have some control. Now, you can only get 3 squares in a game, so you have to be careful about how you do that. But I really like it. It really helps amplify your gameplay.
And I think the next expansion with the squares is my favorite.
Yeah, she loves this.
I love this next one. It's city gates. And so basically these cards come out, and when they come out, they let you take a city gate, which is this chunky white thing, which you put over walls, and now it's a pathway to the center of your city. So normally you can't put a wall against a wall unless it's also against another tile that's open that gives you a straight pathway to the center of your Alhambra. These let you violate that rule. You can put down something, you know, again, hanging off the end on a wall by putting a city gate there. As long as it's wall to wall, it still has to be wall to wall. And then you've got an open path. And this works so well for me because one of the reasons why, previous to playing this game, I think we were 17-2 in Alhambra, you and I. I had the 2, is because spatially, I back myself into a corner,
right.
and I have a wall that's really long, but I can't put anything down. But these let me mess up and fix my mistake or worry less about it. So I really love this expansion. And then when you add it to the squares,
Yeah.
right? So squares have what? Anywhere from 2 to 3 open spaces. You can use the city gates, and now you've got 4 sides.
Yep.
You got buildings on 4 sides of your square.
Yep. So it really does a lot in terms of if you're having difficulty with that. Like she said, the spatial element of building out your Alhambra in a way that doesn't make it hard to place tiles.
Yeah. It just gives you so much flexibility. I love it so much.
Yeah. So that's a good one. I agree with that one. It's definitely up there.
Mm-hmm.
Our next expansion is basically, we've been playing with this one since we introduced it, and I really like it. It's worked really well, and that's the Diamonds expansion. This introduces purple money cards. All they are wild money cards.
Yep.
You cannot mix and match, so you can't use a 6 purple with a 5 yellow to buy an 11 building. But you can use a 6 purple to buy any color building.
Right.
You can overpay. You can pay exact change, whatever you want to do. This really works. Also, I found with the purple, that you get the 3 purple. There's not much use for it, perhaps. But later on, with expansions like the Falconers, I use it to buy the Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
Or I use it to buy a Bazaar. I use it in all kinds of different ways. And it just gives you a sort of the dynamic ability to get more stuff.
Yeah.
Which I think is cool.
Yeah, I think it's really cool too. I agree. I love this. I see no reason to ever take this out. This, like the Vizier, is just, it's a no-brainer. It should always be in rotation. And it gives you that extra bit of flexibility. Because you can't mix and match like a 6 diamond with a 3 blue, it means that, you know, in order to get like a higher value card, you're going to need multiple diamond cards. So it makes it a little bit less fluid, but I think that's actually okay. I think that's a value to it, right? Otherwise it would be a little overpowered.
Right.
I think that's a nice limitation on it. It keeps some of the tension in. All right, so the next expansion is probably the biggest divergence away from the gameplay to this point in expansions, and it is the characters expansion.
Yep.
And so they're basically characters that are you shuffle in, again, like one in this pile, one in that pile, one in that pile, and you bid on them with your fellow game players, and they give you a special power either during scoring. Maybe some of them are one-time use, some of them are in one scoring round, but they give you a special power.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, I'm not 100% love every element of them. One thing is you kind of stop the game and you bid on them when they come out of the deck, which I find just breaks up the flow a little bit. But after a while, we got used to that, and it's not a big deal. But then sometimes this happens. We've had it happen where a character comes out, we bid on it. Then we have to replace that card, and the character comes out, and we bid on it. And then we forget whose turn it was.
Almost every time.
It's like, what just happened? Who went last? So that's not ideal because it does break up that flow, and you kind of lose track of whose turn it is. There's not like a turn order thing that you're passing back and forth, but you could do that as a solution. But the other thing was there was a learning curve to them. It took about 4 games with them to start to know what each of the characters does and not have to go back to the rule book, look them up, be like, what kind of turban is he wearing? You know, it's just like, I can't tell. So, or, you know, the iconography is not bad, but it's not always self-evident. So, you know,
Yeah.
Also, it's the only time you see that iconography in the game, so it's not like you have familiarity with that iconography from other expansions or something. You're just seeing it for the first time with the characters expansion.
Yeah, and they do things like one of them for every, what is it, 3 wall segments, you get a point. I love that one. One of them lets you have an extra free build turn every turn.
For a whole
scoring round. Yeah.
One of my favorites is that there's one guy, so in Alhambra, you can take money, you can take multiple cards up to 5, or you can take, 1 card or more. This allows you to take multi-cards up to 7 for a whole scoring round. Really fun. I mean, it just gives you lots of options, or she really used the one a lot that if you have 0, 1, or 2 money cards, you get to just draw a money card off the deck.
Yeah, because like, Jane always has 27 money cards, and I spend... Yeah.
Spend it down.
This is not unlike real life. I'm like, where'd all my money go? I don't have any left. I spend it all and then build up some more and then spend it all. Well, so that card works really well for me.
So, yeah, I think they're good. But there's other ones that are less powerful. Like there's one that lets you take a tile off the market and put it back in the tile thing and draw another one. That's okay. It could be useful, but it's not usually that useful. So we tend to not
we'll
compete over that one very much.
Send that one away sometimes.
But I will say that there was an expansion later. We'll talk about the Powers of Sultan where that was actually useful.
I had 8 points that I forgot to count because I had that one
employee
in our most recent. One of them is you can just take a character off the top of the deck unseen in exchange for the character, or get 8 points at the end of the game. And I had that one in our last game and forgot to count it.
Yeah,
I still lost by quite a bit.
Score, so
I almost got lapped in that game.
I did okay in that game, but So I like the characters actually a lot. I talked about this. I meant to talk about this earlier, but like one of the things about the mega box that's interesting is if you were playing like a base game of Ticket to Ride, it'd be like, wouldn't it cool if there'd be stocks for the trains, or wouldn't it be cool? So if you play the base game of Alhambra, it's like, why do we have these walls to protect us from invaders? Wouldn't it be cool if invaders were attacking and we were repelling them, or stuff like? Well, all that stuff's in the mega box.
All of it.
All of it.
And we played with all of it.
So
half of it so far.
So half of it so far. So one of those things, of course, is characters. Like there are people occupying these Alhambras. What kind of people are they? And so it's just kind of cool.
Yeah.
I like how these expansions bring out different elements of what would be active within Alhambra.
Yeah. So the next one is another one I really love. It's one of my top favorites, and that's camps.
Yeah, this is a good one as well. This one affects scoring. It's one of my higher rated ones. I think the basic of it is these are tiles that you put outside your walls, and then based on where you put them and how you score points for every building in that row in your Alhambra
or column. I mean, some of the others impact scoring, but this changes scoring. This is a new type of scoring element to it, right? Yeah. Like the squares, it just multiplies. It gives you more power in traditional scoring. This is a complete change, divergence in scoring, and I really liked it. It also changes. This is I think one of the first really substantial changes in gameplay too, because no longer are you just thinking about making sure you get the most green. Now I'm thinking about, okay, like I want a really long column, right? Yeah. And I'm like building out, and I'm going to use that city wall to add another
city camp.
No, I'm going to use the city gate to add. I've already capped off. I've got a wall. Well, I'm going to use the city gate and make that row longer because I just got a camp that's going to go on the left side, and I'm going to score that row. So I really think this one is super interesting, and I use this one a lot.
I also like it because it's not overpowered. It adds points to the scoring, but it doesn't add so many points to the scoring that it diminishes the base core concept in Alhambra of trying to get the most buildings of a particular color. That, to me, should be the driving force behind most games. I have a somewhat contradictory opinion coming up on another one that I really liked, but in this case, I like it because it just fits in with the game, adds a little scoring element, which could totally change who wins the game, but it does not overwhelm the other scoring attributes of the game.
Yeah, I definitely have used this to win once or twice, where I've had a lot of, I've had multiple ones. And sometimes if I've got a really long row or column, I'll get two and I'll cap it. So I'm actually scoring that twice. Yeah, really enjoy that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. You just hinted at it, but the next expansion is the City Walls expansion. So the City Walls expansion, there's I think 8 of these cards that go into the deck and they come out at certain times. And then as an action, you can play one of the City Wall cards off of the general supply somewhere on the table and add walls to an existing building.
This is so great, yeah.
This one's really good for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you're trying to close a gap in your wall so that it can be a longer wall, you can do that with this, obviously. That's a really good use of this. Another interesting use of this is that you might have a tile you just bought for exact change, and you still have an action. So you do a wall because it doesn't fit where you want to put it in your Alhambra because it doesn't have the right walls. Well, you can build the walls, then add it to your Alhambra so it does match.
Yep.
So that's really cool. It gives you a lot of flexibility, and I really like that.
There were a few times where I used the city gate and the city walls to build a wall and then attach it because it was the only way I could get the tile I really, really needed attached to my Alhambra in the spot I needed it. Yeah.
Yeah, it gives you, and you can add walls to tiles on your reserve board, and then the next turn redesign and add them to your Alhambra. So it's just tons of flexibility.
Yeah, really, definitely enjoy using that one a lot.
Yeah, I like it a lot. That's definitely high rated for me. I like this next one too.
I do too.
It's the Thieves expansion. Now, we were worried. When I saw Thieves expansion, I thought, take that. We don't like take that. It is not take that at all. It is actually just useful. Yep. And you basically just get 4 Thief cards at the beginning of the game. And they have a different back, so they stick out, so they don't get mixed in with the other cards. It doesn't affect setup too much. And then, although I do have one comment I want to make about that. And then they match the 4 currency colors. So then at any time, if I have an orange thief, at the end of my turn, I can play the orange thief and take an orange card off of the market, in addition to what I did on my turn. So it's just a way to get money, especially when you're low on money. I find it's really useful to build your hand back up and have stuff to go. Now, the one thing I wanted to say is, as you might have picked up on, you've got City Wall cards. You've got City Gate cards. You've got Thief cards. We have Master Builders coming up.
You've got the characters or cards.
You got the character cards. So you get a lot of different kinds of cards. So this affects setup a lot. You have to put them in the... When you do setup in Alhambra, you split it into your deck into 5 decks. And then you got to add 2 of this to the second pile, 2 of this to the third pile. And that's all a lot of work. So we actually ended up having 2 discard piles in the game at this point, where we have one for all our regular cards and one for all the special cards, so we can isolate them quicker during setup and set up quicker.
Yeah, it does get to be a lot.
Yeah, that's because we're playing with 15 different expansions.
Yeah. But I mean, if you were playing with some of these I think are really great additions to the game, and I don't know that I would ever really want to take them out, which means that it's just going to be that extra bit of setup every time. Yeah,
I would just take them out for teaching newbies.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. So, yeah, the Thieves expansion is really simple. Did you have anything you want to add about it? Or
no, I like it. Agreed. That's a good one.
It's a good one. It's simple. It just lets you get more money cards quicker.
Oh, actually, I will say something. So the Thief and the Vizier can work really well together too, because if you go back to those bonus cards where you were looking for that, the 10 brown with no walls, and you see the money card come out that's going to give you exact change to buy that, you can use your Thief to get the money cards and then your Vizier to immediately get that. And so they kind of like cascade and work really well together. And I think a lot of these, especially this original group of expansions, work really well together. They complement.
I agree with that. Yeah.
All
I
right.
also really like this next expansion. It's one of my favorites. It is the Change expansion. We both use this a lot. And my favorite part of this is it really encourages, because normally with just the base game of Alhambra, I actually go through pains to pay exact change so I get extra actions. I get more actions that way. It's like in a worker placement game. One of the first things you go for is that thing that gives you another worker, so you can do more actions. And in this case, though, this encourages you to overpay and sacrifice an additional action because you get change when you overpay. Now, it's not 1 for 1. So if I buy an 8 value card for 10, I get 1 coin.
It's back. 2 for 1, yeah.
It's 2 for 1. So I get 1 coin, or if I pay 12 for an 8 card, I get 2 coin. And so like every 2 gives me 1 coin, which is worth 1 money in whatever color that coin is, which is random.
Right, you're drawing out of a bag, so you get what you get.
Yep. But, just like grabbing 1 money cards off, multiple 1 money cards off the market, it's really helpful to have those things to get more exact change buys later.
And it becomes more useful when you get to some of the upcoming expansions too. So yeah, I like this one a lot as well. It's just a nice little bonus for overpaying. I was always a rampant overpayer. I could never seem to get exact change, so it works well for me. I get something back for my overpay. Yeah. All right. So the next one I think is one of the most radical changes to the game for any of the expansions. It's the Street Traders expansion.
And I really like this one, but you're not playing Alhambra anymore.
Exactly.
You're playing a different game. And that's fine. It's enjoyable. But you're not playing Alhambra straight up anymore. I mean, because it's so overpowering in the scoring. And so do you want...
Sure. Yeah. So it also changes the way you play the game. So what it is there's meeples, and there's a meeple color for every tile. And at the beginning, you have 3 meeples at a time, and they're on this little square that you move around. When you attach a building to your Alhambra where that square is with the meeple sitting on it, if there's a color meeple on there that matches the building that you play, the meeple goes onto the building. Then you pick another meeple, put it on the tile, and move the tile somewhere else. And then scoring is based on sets of meeples. So you want a full set of 6 meeples that's 1 of every color, right? It scores a lot. And then every subsequent set, or like whether it's bigger or smaller, set of 5, set of 4, set of 3, whatever, also scores. So you could have a set of 6, a set of 4, and a set of 2. Meeples, and you would get a lot of points, but it changes the entire calculus of the game. It scores so much that we had games where more than half my score was the meeples. Yeah. Not the buildings, the meeples. When we were playing with this, I had no idea whether I was in the lead on any color.
That's true too. It's harder to track.
Well, I also wasn't even thinking about it. So normally what you would be doing is thinking, okay, I see Dirk has 3 green and Jane has 4 and I have 5. I don't think there's that many green in the game, but so, like you'd really want to be holding on to that green majority and like playing the green to win the green. In this, you're like, nope, I want a different color because I need my set of meeples, right? Yep. I need as many of each color as I can get. I don't care if I dominate purple or white. I need to get another brown down because I only have 1 brown and I need that extra set of meeples. Like I want my last set to be 2 or 3 meeples, not 1 meeple. And so like that's not what Alhambra is about. Alhambra is sort of a color majority game, trying to get the majority in a certain color. And we just weren't paying attention to it at all. I had no idea. We'd go to square, be like, I don't know. How many do you have? I don't know. Who's winning this? Which is not the way it usually goes. Normally, it's like, I know I got purple, right? But this was it just changed it so much.
And I want to pause for a sec because I want to commend Queen Games. This is related. I want to commend Queen Games because there is so much in here. Like, there's 43 expansions. There's so much content. It's well organized. It has a nice organizer in the box. Although our one side of it went topsy-turvy. Actually, our box has been through a lot. We had a wasp nest in it at one time.
Yeah.
uh, the game's intact. So, the one thing I noticed is like the Falconers expansion, which we'll talk about later, has a little player aid. It has similar kind of scoring where you get a certain amount of a certain type and you get a certain amount of points. The meeple scoring didn't have a player aid.
Right.
Why does that have a player aid and not this when it's the same kind of scoring system?
Yeah, I had no idea how much they were worth.
It was just so random. And then therefore, yeah, she was like, I read the rules. So I knew because I had the rules in front of me, but she didn't. I tried to make sure she knew, but you know, obviously you don't remember that kind of detail very well.
Right. No, you gave me all the information I needed, but it wasn't going to stay in my head. I mean, and you're looking at the rule book that says, you know, 6 is 21 and 5 is 15. And I just know 6 is better, but I don't know how much better. I mean, obviously the more you play with it, the more you would know, but it would be really nice to have that player aid.
Yeah. And so it just was like an issue of it being like, they did such a nice job in this, and there's just this couple little details. Like, if you're going to do player aids for all these expansions that could use player aids.
Yeah.
Not just like one random one.
Or one player aid that has everything on it.
The Falconer expansion player aid's a little tile. They used one side of it. Print the Street Trader meeple scoring on the other side.
Yeah.
Problem solved. And no more cost in printing, just a little bit in design. So anyway, that was just a little thing that kind of irritated me. But I did want to commend Queen because I do think it is highly organized. It is really fun to play through. And there is some really fun expansions in here. So.
And again, and this is one of them. I really, really enjoy this, but it's not Alhambra.
It's a different game.
And we took it out. We actually ended up taking it out after a few games. I would play it again, but I would not. This is not one that we're going to leave in. I think most of the things, except for the bonus cards, up to this point, most of the expansions we keep in.
Yeah, as much as anything else, we took it out because we wanted to test the other expansions playing Alhambra, not playing an expansion that altered how Alhambra was played so much, so significantly. So that was the big thing, and so we took it out, but I did enjoy it. So next up, we have another one that affects scoring.
Yep, and that is treasure chests, and so they are little treasure chests. We'll put a picture in here. They mimic the color of the buildings, and you take a turn and you spend 8 money and you get 4 treasure chests. They're drawn out of a bag, so it's random which 4 are going to be on which tile, and then you put those in, you have to put them in buildings that are the same color. And then you score, this is the first, second, third place scoring. It scores in some ways similar to Alhambra in that the first round, only the top, the person who has the most scores. In the second round, first and second place are scored. And in the third round,
but it's not
first,
by
second,
color.
Third.
It's just by total chests.
It's by total, yeah.
And so in a 2-player game, she buys 4 chests. She puts them in our Alhambra. I buy 4 chests, I put them in our Alhambra. We're tied. She buys 4 chests. I mean, it's just kind of like, it's a very linear concept, and I felt at 2-player at least it didn't work very well.
Well, there is
a well, go ahead.
I was gonna say it rolls down. So like if I the first time we did this, the first group of 4 I took, I had an extra purple one. I didn't have a building, and that went to Dirk.
Yeah, so if you don't have the buildings to match the colors.
So that could happen if you were aggressively buying them, but I just don't see us doing that.
Yeah, and a 2-player, I just didn't think it too interesting. Like, oh, you get the 15 points, I get the 7, whatever.
The worst part about this is that they're the same exact color as the meeples, and I'm still pissed about this. I mistook one of my chests for a meeple. I thought I had 2 full sets of meeples in one game.
Yeah, so you had the multiple objects on your buildings of the same color. I mean, it's just confusing. It's a lot of the same on the same, and it's easy to get mixed up.
Yeah. So this one, I
thought this was blah.
Yeah.
I didn't find it that interesting.
I agree. It might be more fun with more players. I don't know. Yeah.
I think it would require more players to be interesting because then you're competing. And even if you buy chests with 4 players, only the top 3 score. In a 2-player game, the top 2 score. So like, there was a point where she had 8 chests and I had 0. I just made sure to buy 4 chests. So I was second place.
Right.
But it wasn't very interesting a decision. It was just kind of like, I don't know. I didn't feel like an interesting decision.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it added a whole lot to the decision.
I agree.
Space. So next up we have an expansion that adds more cards to the deck. The
Yay.
Master Builders expansion. And this adds a bunch of 3-value cards that are Master Builders. And you can spend them as money or as a free redesign at the end of your turn.
I found that in general, this did not have an impact, except when it was really, really useful. So it was one of those things I didn't think about it. I spent them as money most of the time, but there were a couple times, for example, where I had a building in my storage and I needed to put a city gate and a wall on it. So I needed like three actions to do it, to get it out of storage, and I couldn't, but I used that free money card, or that a Master Builder card, to get it out of storage. And so I was able to place that and use the turn to do the wall or the main gate.
Yeah, I found it helpful that way. I found it helpful to get exact change when buying a building. So I found it actually quite useful. And the main complaint I think that we both had was that the cards have a different design on them, so you can tell them apart from your other 3-value money cards, but it's very subtle.
Yeah.
And it's just, for some reason, I mean, if you look at the 2 cards, you can see the difference in design, but it blends in a little too much in coloration and stuff, so that it's easy to... I've gone through Master Builder cards without even realizing I had them in my hand.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, I had a Master Builder. Whoops.
The other thing I want to say about these is that, again, when you think about all of these expansions as, I don't know, as a whole, or as playing off of each other, these were really nice with the camps, because oftentimes there was a camp that I would purchase just because I had the right money for it, but I didn't want to place it yet, so I'd throw it in my storage area, and then I could use a Master Builder to play it when I knew where it was going to fit. And so it made it a little bit easier to buy things that you knew you eventually wanted and just put them in your storage area, because you had multiple ways to get them out. You weren't sort of beholden to either losing a turn or having exact change to get yourself that extra turn.
Yep. So it's a good expansion. I think the design of the cards could have been a little bolder, just so they stick out a little more. Maybe with some just different color or black outlines or something that made it stick out more.
Yeah.
Our next expansion is one that we did not play with for very long. It's not a bad expansion, but it scores negative points, and so I don't think we liked that. But it's interesting. And the basic concept is that you have invaders coming to invade, and so you want to make sure that whatever direction they're coming from, the wall of your Alhambra is built up as much as possible.
Right.
And if it's not built up completely, you lose points for the exposed sides of your Alhambra on that side.
It just felt like extra work.
It did.
Like, okay, I have to make sure I know where they're coming from and make sure I have the walls built over there. Didn't feel necessarily fun, or like... One of the things I like about Alhambra is it's about maximizing. It's about getting as much as you can. It's about building. And this just felt so like extra work just to make sure that I didn't lose ground. And I didn't like that. It was fine. Yeah, and you could when you, like, there were, what were they called? The cards?
Scouts.
There were scouts, and so if there was a blue scout out and you played a blue building, you could look and see where they were coming from, so you weren't, caught.
So if you didn't do that, it was a surprise what direction they were coming from. So maybe if your walls were really good, you didn't care. But like the third round was tricky, because in the first and second round, just the direction they're coming from would lose points. In the third round, if they were like coming from the east, you would lose like 3 points for every exposed wall on the east side, but you'd still lose 1 point for every exposed wall on the north and south as well. So there was one game I lost like 20 points.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, whoops.
I will say one thing, that one of the things that I've appreciated so far is that there haven't been any Take That expansions on here. There's nothing that like you're undermining the other player, because I hate that. And this is the same. This was not, it's not a positive expansion and we didn't love it. It's not our cup of tea, but it's not like I'm sabotaging Jane's wall.
Right. We weren't affecting each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
which I like.
For a negative expansion, this was not that bad. This was tolerable.
Yeah.
But still, we took it out after like 2 or 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we played it 3 times to make sure.
Yep. We've played everything at least twice that we're talking about today. Most things at least 3 times, some as much as like 12, 15.
20.
All right, so Bazaars is the next expansion. I really like Bazaars.
Love Bazaars.
They're pretty cool. They're markets, right? You put them in the middle of your Alhambra. They're tiles like your building tiles. They work like square tiles. They don't count as buildings. But each one has 3 colors on the bottom. And if you put your Bazaar, and it's a white, purple, and brown colors at the bottom, and you put white, purple, and brown buildings around it, you could score a lot of points.
Yeah, it's basically the number of colors times the number of matching tiles. So if you have all 3 colors, you could have up to 9 matching tiles around it.
8, yeah.
8. Yeah. The most you could score would be 3 times 8, 24.
24 points.
Yeah.
But I will say it's a little overpowered in the sense that it's like you can score a lot of points and it can take over your strategy a little bit.
It definitely can. And this is also a little bit divergent off of the path of, just whoever's got the most green.
Yeah.
And with this one in play, similar to the Street Traders, I have less of an idea about where I stand in that ranking of scoring buildings, like whether I'm first, second, or third, because I need to get the red, blue, and brown buildings around my market to score. But that being said, I really like this expansion, and I've used it very effectively.
Yeah, you've beaten me with it by just amassing a ton of points in your Bazaars. I think not the last game, but the game before that, I was in the lead by like 20 points, and all of a sudden.
That's why I love it.
So it happens. And but it's, so I think a little less than the meeples. It affects your strategy, the Street Trader. But I think I like it. I just like it because it also complements what you're doing. You're focusing on different color buildings, and it does complement that quite well.
And what I realized, so the first game we played with this, I was so intent on getting all 8 buildings to match, and I think I only got 1. And you had like 4 of them. Some of them only had 2, and I'm sitting over there thinking I'm doing a great job. And you way outscored me because you had so many. Right. And so I abandoned the over reliance on matching every building, and now try to get a couple of them in there. And you can also match that to that can fall more in line with making sure that you're number 1 in green or number 1 in white or whatever.
Yeah, you definitely have to balance it with the other goals. So I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I really like this one. I don't know why. I really enjoy it. I really like it. I think probably also because it gives a second way to score, which again is a big change. But it helps me mitigate for your incredible spatial skills. You've got such good... You're like a ninja. It's true.
I'm just going to keep doing that.
Okay, you do that, dear. You're really, really good at these types of games. Like I said, 2-17. That was our record prior to starting this. It was still pretty lopsided, but this is one of those ones that actually helps me do a little bit better and be competitive.
It changes, over 12 for us. So we're still playing with it. We like it quite a bit. The next expansion on our table changes the building scoring. It's new scorecards. I have mixed feelings about it. So one of the mixed feelings, what this does is it completely randomizes what buildings are worth the most points at scoring. So you're used to, if you played a lot of Alhambra, you're used to purple buildings being worth the most, green buildings being worth the second most. White buildings worth the next most. Nope, totally random. totally random, which is a breath of fresh air because it just changes things up. But I think the con to it is that there's actually a specific distribution of tiles based on their values. And so it throws that topsy-turvy because you still have the same distribution, but the scoring doesn't match the distribution.
Right. So there's only 7 blue and red tiles, and they're worth the least in the traditional scoring. If you flip that, if those are worth the most, there's still only 7 tiles.
Exactly.
But this is where squares come in really handy. Is that if blue or red is at the bottom, you know, you might want to grab those squares to make sure that you can multiply the impact of the few buildings that you do have in that color.
And if you're multiplying blue, it can have a bigger impact than even multiplying purple because there's a lot of purple buildings available. So
I think one of the things I think that's really interesting about this too, though, is that there's basically, we'll put a picture below. There's these little planks that have the buildings on them in a particular order, and you drop those into the holes on the scoring sheet. It doesn't stay consistent. It changes it from round to round. It's not just for the whole game that it's like, okay, well now blue's worth the most and purple's worth the least. That could be the case in this first round. The second round, it could completely reverse again, which can help with the runaway leader issue.
True.
So, you know, if you are, or Dirk has 6 purple right out of the gate, you know, you're like, nobody's competing in that for the rest of the game. Well, suddenly that turns around and that's now worth the least. So in the next round, I, who had the most of the least scoring buildings, am on top. And so I think it kind of can mitigate for that.
And you're all like, I'm doing great. What?
And then I'm like, yeah. I don't know. I also just found it really interesting. I like it because it really changes how you're building your Alhambra and how you're buying tiles without actually changing the fundamental DNA or skeleton of the game. It's just a really interesting way to change it. I think the variable scoring, and I think variable scoring in any game to me is much more interesting than just the same thing every time.
All right, we only have a couple more expansions we're going to talk about because we're getting towards the halfway point here. So just bear with us. The next one on the list is the Power of Sultan. And we've played with this, I think, 3 times. And I think we're about to drop it. It's okay. What it is, in principle, I kind of like, which is there's these cards that come out of the deck. You can buy those cards, and they're kind of like a reservation on that color building. So, like, if you roll a die to determine what color building they influence, which can be totally random and can affect their usefulness, you can re-roll that die, but that can end up with worse results.
As it did, at least once for me.
So it's possible, for example, to buy one of these, roll the die, have it come up red, and it turns out all the red buildings are already gone, so you can't use it at all. So, and they cost 7, so it costs a little bit of money. So I do think they are useful, though. So you roll a die, it's maybe a purple card, and the next time a purple tile, someone buys a building and a purple tile comes out of the stack to be put on the market board, you actually get a claim on that for free before it's put down. And so you can get a purple. So if you really need a certain color building, it's very useful to sort of putting a claim on that building when it comes out.
I made the mistake the first time we did this of buying one and it had blue. And I think I bought it because the blue were worth the most in that game. But blues are the cheapest tiles. And so I spent 7 on it and realized that there weren't a lot of blue tiles that were worth more than 7. There's only one. There's only one.
But it's still worth it at times, especially if you're playing with the new scoring cards and blue's worth a lot because there's not a lot of blue, even if they're cheaper. And you're kind of overpaying for it, but you still need that blue.
And that's what you just have to realize is, number one, pay attention to how many tiles are out. At one point, like, I had the brown one and realized that there were no brown left. 2, you're possibly going to be overpaying for the tile. But that might be okay. It's about deciding whether or not you really want that or not.
Now, I will point out that there is a very useful player aid for this expansion. It shows all of the buildings and all of their wall formations.
This is so interesting.
For every color.
This is the best. This should be in the base game.
It's so useful. It just shows that walls that are like this, and there's let's see, there's a 4 brown and an 8 purple.
Yep. Yep. The U, there's a 3 red and a 6 green.
Yeah.
Love it.
I mean, knowing that is huge. So that's that. You know, like I complained about there not being a player aid on the Street Trader, but this is a really good player aid.
Yeah, it really is.
So yeah, so the Power Sultan we took out. We generally, whatever. It's also a little bit fiddly because you're putting a cube on the cards and then you're rolling dice and maybe your dice hits the cube and you forget what color it was on and you end up with like 5 of these on the table at one time. It's just too much.
And it's a whole extra turn to buy it for,
it's an extra
for something
action.
Future that may or may not happen or may or may not be valuable. At this point, there's so much going on in the game that I just don't have a lot of motivation to do this either.
Now, maybe if you were only using this in combination with the base game or with 1 or 2 expansions, it'd be less of an issue. But I find it just, there's too many moving parts and it's not really that great of an expansion.
Yeah.
It's okay. So, I don't know that any of these are bad. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, none of them are bad.
So, the next up, we have the Caravanserai.
Caravanserai, I like that word.
Yep. And the Caravanserai is basically, it's a little cart. You have to pay for it. You can't buy one until you have at least 4 different color buildings in your Alhambra. And depending on how many different color buildings you have in your Alhambra, it's cheaper. So, like, if it's $8 if you have 4 different colors in your Alhambra, it's $4 if you have 5, and it's $2 if you have 6. So the more colors you have in your Alhambra, the cheaper it is. And it's kind of a cool card, but I kept forgetting to use it. It's a card with a little ladder, sort of, or a little track. And at the beginning of your turn for the rest of the game, you have a little black cube and you move it up the track. And every time you go to the track, it's worth 1 more coin of a certain color.
Right, and the cards are specific colors. So like one might be an orange track with a few branches for other colors, but it's mostly orange. One is blue, one might be green, and you don't know what you're getting when you buy either. So it's totally random. And
it's useful in a sense that, like, let's say it's worth 4 orange, and I need 4 orange to buy an orange building, or a building in the orange market space. So I can use the card instead of my money in my hand and zero out the card, right? Fine. And then next turn, I start moving it up the track again. So it's like kind of a regenerating money source. So it is like nice.
Income, yeah.
But I kept forgetting to move it up, which a little bit on me, but it's also like suddenly I have to remember this other thing I need to do every turn.
It might be valuable early in the game to try to get a couple of those. So you've got, like, you know, just income going up on multiple ones, but haven't really.
I want to keep playing with it because I want to see if I can get used to moving it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I will say this. I've used this a couple times. I also forget to do it. When I remember, it always is useful. I always find a moment where I'm like, aha, I have this. I can pay exact change, or I can overpay, but I don't have enough green in my hand. Oh, I have a green money track. I can actually buy that building.
Yeah, and it's useful. It's useful. I think I want to play with it more though and see how useful I can make it.
Yeah.
Because you can get like 2, and then you could do a lot. So you could sort of really. You could lean into the strategy of using the Caravanserai.
Yeah, you could.
So, anyway, the next expansion,
Art of the Moors.
Art of the Moors is about art, but I kind of forgot it was about art. It's a bit abstract. But it's when you buy your second building worth 10 or 9 or 8 or 7, you grab a wheel.
From 6 to
12, 13. 12 and 13 is the same. So, because there's not many cards, 12, 13, there's 3.
No, up here.
Down here.
Oh.
There's the player aid for, it has a very nice.
I never got that.
Yes, you did. It's the other side of the Power Sultan card. I pointed it out to you. So the player aid for Power Sultan is also used for Art of the Moors. And if you flip it over, it shows you how many buildings cost 6 and what those buildings are. And how many buildings cost 7 and what those buildings are. So totally useful. Very good player aid. Very good player aid. So there are multiple moving parts to this. But you take a dial, and depending on how many of the building of value 10 that you have, so you take the 10 dial, you put your cube on a certain space. And then the dial's kind of like a clock. It's got like 0, 2, 4, 6, or whatever going around it. And then for an action, you can turn all your dials. Because you can have like 6 of them if you want. If you buy the right buildings. So, and then you get points for them every scoring. It can be pretty powerful scoring-wise. But I think we used it the most in this last game. And I broke 300 points for the first time. I think
our scores are just going up and up and up and up. You actually almost lapped me. You did lap me until the final scoring condition when I actually got ahead of you and wasn't behind you anymore. But yeah.
But this is, I actually like this one. It's a little fiddly, but I like it.
I do too. It's just, again, it's like one more thing. There's so many things you could do. It means, so I know like with the change, there's less incentive to buy with exact change. Now there's more though, because there's so many extra things you can do. Like I don't want to spend a turn by building a wall or taking a city gate.
I want to turn my wheels.
Or turning my wheels, right? Like I want to do all of those things as an extra after I either take money or after I do a building, right? And so there's just so many things to do now that it does get to be a little bit overwhelming.
But this does incentivize you to overpay for a building too.
It does.
Like, I really need another 10 so I can get the 10 dial and start getting points off it.
And I will tell you, our first game that we played with these, I had so much trouble getting the right value.
Yeah.
They weren't coming out. And when they were coming out, I didn't have the right money and you were buying them. And I did eventually end up doing well.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah.
But I was I could not get one. It was frustrating for you. It was really frustrating.
My last game was a little bit like that at first. I did eventually do well with them, but like it took me a while.
Yeah.
So we have one more expansion to talk about.
And I really love this one.
Although I think it's overpowered. And that is the Falconers.
And this is the only one we played before. We actually played this when we first got this in 2019.
Because we like birds.
We like birds. This expansion, basically on a given turn, it's the only thing you can do, is you can buy a falcon. And you can buy as many as you want in that turn. Each falcon costs 1 money card, whether it's a 1 or a 9. Costs 1 money. And you can use your coins for this, which is nice. And I think you can also use your Caravanserai for this as well. So there's multiple different ways to do it. Then each bird has 2 different colors on it, and you have to put it in a square of 4. It goes in the center, the junction of 4 tiles, and there has to be at least one of each of the colors that are shown on the falcon. So a blue and a green, or a purple and a white. There are 3 different types of falcons, and then you just score for having a set of one type of falcon, anywhere from, I think, one scores, right? Yeah, 1 to the whole set. And
it came with a player aid.
It did, and it could, if you manage to get all of one type of falcon, it would be a lot of points. It's 30 points. So it ranges from 2 for 1 to 30 for all 5 or 6 of the falcons.
I think they're good. I just think the scoring's a little aggressive. 30 points. That's a big point total. I don't like that, and
you doubled my score in the last. Yeah, I got 18. You got 36.
It was just because I had 20 points because I had 4 falcons of a type, and so I just got so many points for it. It's just, I feel like the scale could have been less aggressive.
Yeah. Yes, and I think that might be true with like a lot of the things, like the meeples and whatnot, is if the scale wasn't so aggressive, it would fit a little bit better into it. But this really...
Go ahead, sorry.
It really changes it. And also, as the game goes on, you might not have the buildings for the falcon. Like that last turn, I had enough money to buy 3 falcons, but I didn't have a spot for one. Like there was no falcon that would fit in my last juncture.
Right.
So, and I'm definitely not paying attention to that. Like I'm already like, oh, there's a lot going on. I'm trying to think about here, matching colors, matching blah, blah. Like that's not happening. I'm not building tiles to fit my falcons.
And I just want to point out again that this has a scaled scoring, just like the meeples, but this has a player aid and the meeples doesn't, the Street Trader. Why? That doesn't make any sense. Like
we'll probably find it in the box.
No, there was.
No, I know.
It says.
I know it says.
But like, there's a flip side to this. It just says Art of a Falcon Head. Like, put the scoring to the meeples on the flip side, like you did with the Power of Sultan and the Art of the Moors.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you didn't do that here. I don't understand. Help me out, Queen Games. I don't know.
I mean, they make such beautifully produced games.
They do. I love Queen Games, actually. I know they get some heat for their communication around Kickstarters, which isn't great. But, like, you know, they always deliver, and I like the games they produce.
So that is our first round. We're halfway through.
We're halfway through. And I wanted to also mention, we just started playing the Fresco Mega Box. And we should do a video of that one, too, when we're done.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll do a part 2 video. This was one of our longest videos we ever made. I'm exhausted. I am disabled, so making these longer videos is a little bit harder.
We might even split the last grouping into 2.
Yeah, we have to see, because the designer expansions are coming up, and we're worried they're going to be more complex. Although the rules are still just a page, but which might require longer discussion times, and if it does, we'll split it up. But we'll figure that out as we play them.
Yeah.
So hopefully this is taking us longer than we'd hoped. It's already mid-February, and we're halfway through. We've been doing this for over a month, so.
But we're adding them 2 at a time now.
Two at a time.
Hopefully another couple weeks, and we'll be done with this.
Yeah. So yeah, we're trying to be aggressive. So anyway, I think, you know, one thing I want to say real quick is the Alhambra Mega Box. Playing through it is really fun.
It is really fun. I'm having so much fun with it. This is just the type of thing that's so interesting for us. You know, it's like taking the experience of a game and just blowing it out of the water.
This is Alhambra on steroids.
Yeah.
It really is.
Especially if you've got like ADHD and you need that like dopamine hit for the new and the unique, this is perfect. It's like every guess, like, what are we adding this time? And the last 2 are still kind of fresh. And so, you know, it's very exciting. We're having so much fun with this.
And this is a big advertisement for having, if you can, not everybody can do this, having a dedicated campaign game table. We're able just to leave this set up because we have a dedicated table for like a campaign game, and don't have to break it down and set it up again. We have to set up for the game, but we don't have to take apart, you know, put it back in the box and put it away. We just leave it set up. So
yeah.
Of
course, we did that with our dining room table at our last house. So
yeah. So, but we have like 4 dedicated tables now, and so it really has an impact on our ability to get games to the table more frequently, especially with my disability. I tire very fast, so let's not waste time with breaking down, opening boxes, and setting games up.
Yep, absolutely.
So yeah.
All right. Well, let us know in the comments if you've played any of these expansions and what were your favorite, or if you have the Mega Box and haven't played. We'd love to have you get it to the table and tell us what you think. And thanks for watching. I'm exhausted. Thanks for watching. Remember, every day that you game is a holiday. Bye.